coming at you with another awesome episode of Talking Sense. I'm your host, Latney Conant, and today I am honored to be joined by Alyssa Merwin. Alyssa has had a baller career, everything from Gartner, CEB, and just a great run at LinkedIn. She's helped to really grow the LinkedIn sales insight solution, which we're going to learn more about today. And so we're going to dive into her career. We're going to dive into the LinkedIn sales intelligence solution and a concept that they are pioneering called deep sales. So welcome, Alyssa. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with LSI because everybody knows LinkedIn. I mean, you'd have to be under a rock to not know LinkedIn. And the sales and marketing audience that is our listeners, I'm sure, use Navigator daily. But that's not what we're talking about. It's something else. So tell us about LSI, what problems you're solving for, who the persona is. Just educate the listeners on what's available.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for giving me a platform to talk about this because I think it's something that is so important in today's world. I mean, I think we can all agree that the world of selling is it's getting more and more complex, more and more competitive, more and more challenging, certainly in this environment by the day. And what we all want for our sales organizations is for them to be as productive, as focused, and as effective as possible in spending time and energy with the right prospects, the right customers. And so what the sales insights solution is allowing companies to do is something that they're able to tap into sales intelligence that they can't get anywhere else. And that's because of the LinkedIn ecosystem and the proprietary first-party data that we're sitting on. And what it really allows at a really sort of fundamental level is giving, whether we're talking about a sales ops organization, sales leaders and executives, or even the sales reps themselves, the ability to prioritize and understand the opportunity. So you can think about it in terms of, how do I identify my total addressable market? How big is my TAM today as I understand it? And how is that changing over time? And so the proprietary part and what's really unique about the sales insights solution is it's updated in real time with things that are hard to get elsewhere. And I think that one of the things that you and I have talked about that is really exciting is this idea of data like headcount growth. So if you're an organization that is selling a solution based on the number of users, it's not just helpful to understand maybe the company revenue and capture that as part of your territory and account planning, but actually to understand headcount growth and declines, especially in this market where we're seeing a lot of growth in some industries and a lot of decline in others, and to be able to understand that in real time based on individual job movement and headcount moves. So that's just an example of the kinds of insight that the Sales Insights product is providing. And then if you think about the use case, it's how do I maybe assign better accounts to my team? How do I make sure I fully appreciate and understand our TAM? How do I think about it differently across different geos, different industries? And one of the other interesting elements that's quite unique is we can look at the relationship density of your sales team and how connected or not they are to, again, your prospect and customer universe. And so those are some of the things that exist today on the roadmap. I'll share, we're also super excited because we're going to be incorporating your ideal customer profile. So the ICP. And if you tell us your ideal customer profile, we will be able to uncover and surface additional companies or opportunities that you should go after and then upload them into CRM. So we can do some of the heavy lifting. So I'll stop there, but those are some of the things we're super excited about.
So I think this is critical for all revenue leaders. And so I'm going to put my little soapbox up and stand up on it for a second. So TAM is great for investors. They want to see that you have a big TAM. And they want to understand how penetrated you are with your TAM. And that's all well and good. And you know what, when you're doing strategic planning, you need to look at those things. But I think day in and day out, the word of the year is efficient growth. And the most important thing to grow efficiently is to really have a great understanding of your ideal customer profile. And what I see, and I have a lot of conversations all the time, is I see a lot of people when you really press them about their ideal customer profile, it's a static list that maybe everyone agrees on, maybe they don't. Maybe a consultant created for them. And it's a static list based on really basic company size, maybe geo, maybe vertical. And again, on the soapbox, if you are listening right now, you can do so much better than that. And it is the key to efficiency in your marketing and your selling motion. And when I say there's more to that, one, companies change, they grow, they merge, they acquire, right? So not static is key. And the second thing is think about situational things. Are they acquiring companies? Maybe that's good for you. Are they divesting companies? Are they hiring? Right? Are they, if you sell a certain number of seats, you want to go after people that are going to be able to buy a lot of those seats, right? In an economy like today, are they still hiring? Are they shrinking? These things are this is what's going to, I think, give you a competitive advantage as you look to the future. And so I always talk about your ideal customer profile and then actually your in-market customer profile. Right. And some of those hiring trends might indicate whether they're in market or not, which again, those are the ones that you call today versus, maybe not, maybe don't even assign to a territory. So I'm obviously passionate about what you guys are doing, and we're excited to incorporate it into our machine, which we really are big on this. So thanks for providing an awesome product.
Well, thanks. And the one other that I'd add to what you just shared is there's, we think a lot about quality revenue too. So it's one thing to just understand the universe of all the people you could sell to, but the propensity to buy is one component, but so is their likelihood of success with your product.
Yes, and you don't want to buy propensity to churn.
Exactly. Propensity to churn, to grow, to have success, to find value. We're not interested in growth at all costs. It needs to be quality revenue. And so I think that's another thing that maybe, depending on the life cycle of your company, you may not think as much about that early on because you want to just go, capture the world. But over time, it becomes so important because of the cost of acquisition, the cost to serve, and of course your brand and the value in the market.
Yeah. For those listening, check out Lars Nilsson's episode. We talked about something similar, and he defined the process for non-target. If they're not a good account, you still need to process. And he talked about that. So definitely a theme here. So you've rolled out a campaign, a new campaign, and taken a world tour. Which looks like a lot of fun. Tiring, I assume, but a lot of fun.
Both, yes.
About deep sales. So how'd you come up with, the marketer in me is like, how'd you come up with that? And what does that really mean? And, give us kind of behind the deep sales campaign, why you think it's so important and are passionate about it.
Yeah. Well, it's, I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes of how we got there. And then I think the why and why it's so relevant right now is super, super important. The why we even decided that this was something worth pursuing and talking about and thinking about was, we sit on this just tremendous treasure trove of data at LinkedIn, not surprisingly. And the world of B2B selling, I should say the world of B2B buying has changed fundamentally, but what hasn't actually changed is how we sell for the most part. There's been monumental shifts in the way B2B buyers purchase and go through their own, decision making. But sales has, I think, in large part remained rather static in a lot of ways.
And marketing too.
And And marketing too. That's right. And we started to say, I think we're sitting in all of this intelligence, but we haven't really sort of like tried to understand what are we learning and seeing in the data, in the behavior, and seeing both on the buyer side and seller side, which we have access to because both constituents show up on the LinkedIn platform. And we started to do some research. And one of the things that we found is that there are cohorts of performers, so top performers that we characterize as anyone over 150% of quota. And we looked at this on a global scale across industries, regions, types of sales, and we found something really surprising. And it was that the top performing reps actually sold less time. They spent less time selling than everyone else. And I think that's like very counterintuitive to any of us who've grown up in a sales or marketing role.
Well, let's quantify time selling. Yeah. What does that mean? Because some might say, oh, well, were they like, is that time in front of a client? Or like, what is time selling? Define that.
Yeah, so time in front of a client, you can break this down. If you want to break it down even further, perhaps they're doing like fewer at-bats, fewer discovery calls. They're spending less time in a quote unquote sales process. They might actually be seeing and spending time with fewer prospects and customers. And so that is a very strange, I think, truth that for any of us, because oftentimes we think, well, we need more top of the funnel. We need more volume.
Leads.
Right. But what we found is that these top performers, while they were selling less, maybe no surprise, they were converting at much higher rates. And so then we started to ask the question, okay, so like how, what are they doing specifically that's different? And we found that there were sort of three things that they were doing differently than everyone else. One is going back to our conversation just a minute ago, they were prioritizing much more effectively than your average performers. Two is they were acting on sort of signals of intent or signals of interest better and more quickly. And number three, they were finding what we call hidden allies. And that's, that those could be maybe former customers, former employees, perhaps people in the network, that are connected to executives at Sixth Sense that you want to break into, and there are relationships you can leverage to get in the door. And so these top performers were sort of doing these things with kind of bubble gum and tape or whatever the phrase is. I mean, they're doing it on their own often, just really adept at finding those signals and being super strategic and thoughtful about how to spend their time, who they're spending it with, and how to get in the door. And this was sort of the genesis of this concept of they are exhibiting what we believe, we call this deep sales. These are deep sales behaviors. This is not the spray and pray approach of I'm just going to go try to, get in touch with reach out to as many people as I possibly can and see what sticks. I'm going to be super thoughtful, and I might spend less time, selling. I might spend less time more time with fewer people, but the outcomes are going to, I'm going to get to better outcomes. And so that was sort of how this came to be. And, as we started to dig more into these habits and also look at, what are we able to do through Sales Navigator and our insights products, it maps really well too, to, some of the best practices that we see our own sellers doing, right? We see this our own sales team. And I think your teams are probably no different, right? Where we want people to spend time with the best opportunities, highest propensity to buy and find value, get the foot in the door and be able to convert those opportunities at a better rate. So I'll stop there, but that's sort of how this came to be. And what we mean by deep sales is that those habits that the top performers are doing that we believe if we can get the rest of the organization to emulate, we can help shift the performance curve of commercial orgs.
Mind blown. I'm so glad I asked. So I'm going to double click on the prioritization point and put some more data on top of that. So obviously for us at Sixth Sense, we're pretty passionate about prioritizing. It's a core offering that we have. And we look at all of our customers every quarter. So we have hundreds and hundreds of quarters of data. And we look at when they work the prioritized accounts, so ones that are exhibiting not just demographic, firmographic, but to your point, behavior, the right buying behavior. And those are what get prioritized. 2 times better ASPs, 30% faster cycle times, and 20% better win rates. And so it's like, why are we doing the other stuff? And I think the best salespeople inherently know that. But we've got to be able to give that, we have to scale that kind of that knack or that nose across our teams.
And we have to give them the tools to be able to do that, because I think that the best reps sort of, in a lot of cases, they intuitively sort of know what they're looking for. They know how to go find the right information, and they're intuitively doing this, but that's not, we need it to be more science than art. And so being able to give them the tools that kind of surface those insights is a big part of this, right? Because I think it's no longer enough to know, who to contact. I mean, that's sort of commoditized and generally available information.
There's a company that does that. They do a great job.
Right. Absolutely.
Go get a list of contacts and go to town.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. The way I think about it is the who and the who is not the challenge. What the challenge is today is the how, the when, and the why someone is going to engage.
Yeah. The why I think is critical. We talk about like relevance, and people love to talk about personalization. And I get lots of personalized emails and LinkedIn mails because they know I went to the University of Virginia, or they know I live in Chicago. And none of that stuff floats my boat, right? But if you talk to me about my job and how to do my job better, if you talk to me about something that I've researched before, or that it's a problem I'm trying to solve right now, if you talk to me about something about relevant to 6 Sense, high growth, other SaaS, in my competitive set, like if you talk to me about how you've solved something for someone very similar to me before, then I'm all over it. I'm like, yeah, why would I? You're helping me do my job. And so I think like that switch from personalization, which is almost like mail merge, to, what you would call deep sales is being a lot more relevant. It's just like, you're not going to get any action otherwise. Like no one's going to respond.
Right. And we've all seen the stats at this point, but the sort of MarTech revolution and pandemic move to everything virtual, outreach just skyrocketed, and outreach from all of the buyers and decision makers has just plummeted. And so it's not enough to do, so we call that approach there's a shallow versus a deep approach, and shallow is just it's not going to win in this environment. And we took it one step further. We just came out with some predictions for next year. We think that there is a world, it's already happening a little bit today, but there's a world where continual shallow outreach is going to start to really damage seller and brand reputation. It's not a good look. And
I think it's 100%. I think we are there. I mean, you get a couple of these viral posts about you and you're kind of done, And what's interesting, Alyssa, about your role and being at LinkedIn is, product aside and having an offering aside, you kind of have a responsibility to propagate the right way.
We do. And it's so important for our ecosystem. We're not interested in people using LinkedIn or InMails or emails or whatever medium you choose to continue to reach out with the shallow approach. And so, yes, regardless of which products you use, we think just as both being on the receiving end of outreach and as a commercial leader, and someone who would, we want to help to create the right habits, behaviors, and experiences to make the B2B buying experience better for everyone.
There's a new one out there. I don't know if you've heard about this one, but they reach out and ask you for a restaurant recommendation in your neighborhood. It's really, really doesn't work. Don't do that, people. Yeah, that's like, it's happening all the time. The weight loss ones were also interesting. I'm like, okay, why am I in your ICP? This is not helping.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's probably where so much of this goes wrong is the ICP. I mean, just the outreach that we get, I'd say 90% of it, I'm not the right person. And
yeah,
then
or franchise. No, what about me says I want franchise?
let's get our targeting, our ICP, our prioritization. And then I think step 2 is let's make sure when, we're figuring out how to engage in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you touched on this a little bit, but it's an interesting time right now. And how have you seen, and you've had a big sales career, I mean, huge sales career. What has changed since, you think about yourself as a frontline rep to now leading a huge team of AEs? Like, what's changed? What's different?
I mean, so much has changed. When I started in sales, I was definitely part of this spray and pray and cold call generation. I mean, I started as a BDR and, I was cold calling into finance executives and, trying to book meetings. And, I think those were the days when we had sales and marketing were very linear and independent processes in a lot of ways. But what was interesting about that era is sales really sort of held the power because there wasn't as much information available online, and that was a really important element of what we were able to book meetings and to get conversations that we might not have been able to get otherwise because you just couldn't access as much content as you can today.
Yeah, you held cards that they didn't have. You had a value prop that was different. And today that value prop doesn't exist anymore so much.
That's right. And so that was, when I was kind of growing up in sales, then, I think you had the sort of MarTech revolution and the just the technology that started to pop up. You had really like interesting point solutions. And you started to see that you enabled rep behaviors. You were able to sort of, enable them with technology. And that's when, we started to see just the mass outreach. And a lot of what marketing would have done, you started to see reps be able to do a little bit more of that themselves, right? And so it was marketing complemented by rep engagement to their ICPs. And I think that was super interesting, in the early days and really revolutionized a lot of, we probably thought of it as made reps more productive. But as that started to become, again, a commoditized space and a little bit more, every company invested, you no longer had the early mover advantage of that technology. And you started to see that, again, the sort of outreach that we're talking about, that wasn't super effective. And then you couple that with the pandemic, everything shifted to virtual, all companies trying to figure out how do we sell, moving from field to, behind a computer screen. And again, those response rates dropped. And now you find that today we're in a different environment when, we're calling it the great rationalization. Every CTO, every CMO, every CRO is saying there's so many options today. Our approach is probably less effective. It's not working as well as it did, 6 and 12 months ago. I think during the pandemic, I was just talking to a customer and they called it the sugar rush. Budgets sort of opened up, money fell from the sky. Everyone was investing in technology. We were seeing these just incredible digital transformations happening at companies that we would never have expected to have been going through that. And I think now we're at a place where every company is saying, okay, we made all these investments. What do we really need? How do we right size? How do we think about productivity differently? And so I think, and now, again, there's so much information available online. And I think that sales, this goes back to my point. I just think sales hasn't adapted enough to more of the omnichannel experience and we can no longer hold the cards. We need to, I think, be more open with pricing information and kind of meeting the buyers the way that they want to buy today, right? Which is actually getting through most of the sales cycle without needing to talk to someone until they need to talk to someone to really help think through, pros and cons and different solutions. So I think it's been quite an interesting evolution over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Mary, who was a guest, you guys should check out her episode, has some new data. 73% of companies want to rationalize their sales tech stack right now. But at the same time, they've got the same numbers, if not slightly reduced. I mean, most people, I think, have slightly reduced their forecast. They're not planning on growing their sales team. So they also, a high percentage, I think it was like almost 60%, still are going to invest in technology, right? So it's like there's a rationalization, I think, happening, but also an understanding that like we can't keep doing what we're doing and expect, the results to be what they need to be, because we can't spend at those levels. So it's like, how do we fundamentally change, the way that we work? And I think we're definitely seeing that in our client base is people just want to sell smarter.
Absolutely. And simplify, so much about sales. I always say like one of the biggest risks to a successful sales organization is variability in the sales process, inconsistency. And so we just have to, I think, just generally make things simple. It's like what are the fewest things that you need to provide to your team, to ask them to go do, to enable them to win. And there is sort of like that beauty and simplicity. And I think we're in a moment, whether because of the macro, well, certainly because of the macro, but also because of the need to rationalize and just make things easier in a difficult moment. So yes, it makes so much sense. And I think we're all feeling it.
How do you do that as a sales leader when I say everyone wants a slice? Like everyone wants a piece of not just your time, but everyone wants to be on, I'm sure, on your call and present something to your AEs. Everyone wants them to learn something new or adopt some new process. So how do you almost gatekeep for your team?
It's so hard.
Yeah, right? Like you want to be a good corporate citizen, but you're like, sorry, no one cares about that.
It is probably, I think it's one of the hardest things as a leader is making those decisions about what are we going to do? What are we not going to do? I think in difficult times and when people are kind of feeling stress and uncertainty and just, maybe people feel like they're not winning as much. I think as leaders, we have to be more prescriptive than ever and more directive about, these are the couple of things that matter. And it's hard because there are a million things I'd love for us to go do better or differently. But trying to figure out what are the critical few is actually one of the harder decisions I think that I have to make. So, I guess the answer is I would try, our best to figure out what are the couple things that really are important. I think maybe deep sales is a good example. It was one of the most important, or for me as a new leader of this business, one of the most important priorities for us was to make sure we were bringing this sort of insight and perspective to the world because we felt like it was so important in this moment, not just, because it happened to support our solution, but because we're seeing this trend just sort of persist in the way that sales is happening. And we think there's a better way. And so, I think time will tell. Is that like the right big bet to make and right time to say to my sales organization, 1,000 people, I want you to go learn how to help our customers understand this approach and what deep sales means for them. While there are a million other things we could be doing. So I don't know. Do you have any great ideas or ways that you manage through it?
Oh, I just, I'm about the rule of threes.
Yeah.
So, which is nothing new, but, and I think I probably can be overly blunt sometimes with folks where I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. We don't care about that right now.
I think it's so clarifying though.
I like it. And, it's funny. I'll see their face where they're like, I have this discussion. I'm like, we're not marketing your product line right now. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're just not. Sorry. I had one where I'm like, you can build it and we'll put up some collateral on it, but I'm like, I'm going to bury it so deep in the World Wide Web. No one's going to find it. So there you go. And they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, we just don't have time. So I don't know. I'm probably overly blunt, but
there's probably something so powerful in your directness, so powerful for the team. At least they know. They know.
I did it with a smile. Just don't want you to be disappointed. But I don't know. So one thing I'm really big on is finding the red. And I think as a leader, our job is to find and fix red and actually be okay admitting that stuff's always going to be red. You don't want to be Chicken Little, like everything's on fire. That's another problem. And it kind of goes back to the big three. Like typically the big three for me are, the data shows me these are the things we got to do. How do you do that? Like, what are some of the things you think about? You've got a big business, big goals. Like what's the process for you? And maybe what are some of the things you're working on right now?
Well, I think also one of our most important jobs as leaders is to find the red and, figure out. I always think of it as the most sensitive levers in the business. So a lot of things can be red, but there are probably only a few that really matter.
Yeah, true.
And also that can be easily influenced, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of them might matter, but
are like the macro. I cannot change the interest rates, people.
Well, I'll give you maybe we're close to home for a sales organization is, if you just think about some of the basic KPIs we all spend a lot of time thinking about. Now, everyone might have their own opinion on this, but we can look at conversion rate, we can look at ASP, we can look at, disco volume. I think trying to convert something or change something like conversion rate, that's like it might be very red right now, but that is not something that's super easy to go fix or change, right? That generally requires enablement, coaching, skill development.
3-quarter project to really
at least, work. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is identifying the red, but identifying the red that's sort of movable, if that's the right word, that you can influence, and that is the most sensitive in that if you're able to move it, it will have the biggest lift on the business and performance. And so, we're kind of constantly looking at that. And we just went through an exercise, given the current macro. I think we're all experiencing sales cycles are just longer, right? It's taking more to get through, more people involved, all of the things that we know. But I'm not sure that we had done enough to sort of reevaluate. Are we still using the same KPIs that we were using 6 months ago? The world's very different than it was even 6 months ago. And so how do we need to just recalibrate on what we're asking the team to go do and how we want them to go do it? And so for me, part of the red was maybe not necessarily changing what we're asking them to do, but changing the inputs. And right, we have to do like sort of more and better.
Yeah. And also I think about being stage appropriate too, right? Sometimes things, yes, if we were this big, this would be a problem. But given our size, it's kind of just is what it is. We're not going to be great at that, So there's also that, right? And this is a new product line. So this is what we would expect.
Right.
We're not going to have, we are launching a bunch of new products. We're not going to have a 40-some% win rate on potentially a product that we're going to be out evolving the pitch and, doing those things. So some of it is what's the right expectation?
Absolutely. And even things like the margin profile, right? You might have, with our sales insights product, it's new to the market. It's new to our reps. There's going to be different expectations of performance and conversion. There are going to be, cost to acquire, and the margin profile to acquire new customers is going to be different in different regions of the world. And so just sort of stepping back and making sure we're constantly calibrating, to your point, on where are we in the maturity of this market, of this product, of our business, and constantly, I think, just asking ourselves, do we have the right expectations? I think this is such a great point.
Mm-hmm. How do you go and deliver that? I know we're going off script, but
It's your script.
No script, but off questions, I should say. But there's an art of resetting expectations that makes you not sound, you can't go and be whiny and excusey, right? As a leader, I'm talking about like managing up, right? But what's that art of delivering? You know what? There's going to be a different expectation.
Yeah.
And here's why, and not sounding excusey. And like, how do you do? Obviously, you've done a great job at it because you've, done amazing. But not everything's always perfect. So what's any secrets for people that have to go and have those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it's very seldom perfect, but I think that it's exactly what you just said, which is part of it, I think, is really understanding what the current state is and how it may align to expectations or in many cases differ, and just owning it. And I think a big part of that is, what did we learn in the process? Where did we maybe miscalculate, have the wrong expectation, overly ambitious, and really getting to root cause. And I think that's so important. I mean, with so many parts of the businesses we lead, is this a product issue? Was it an expectations issue? Was it a rep enablement and buy-in? I mean, I think it's getting to a level of understanding and ownership of, we didn't anticipate we needed more of this, or right. And so I think that my just general experience has been, it's not excuses, it's just owning it. And I think the more we can own it, but also be able to explain and get to root cause, the easier it is to navigate some of those conversations. And I've generally found that it's been a pretty understanding on the other side when you do those things.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. My best board meeting was my worst performance. And I thought that it was going to be like horrible. And I think it's because I was like, I just was like, here's what happened. Here's what, da, 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 da. It's not where I want it to be. It's not, and they were like, okay, great. I'm like, am I done? But that was like this big lesson for me. Like, I just kind of came clean with where we were at.
What are you going to go do differently, right? I mean, I think it's sort of as much as you can ask, is just owning it and coming up with, where do we go from here?
So, I want to talk about marketing. You've got an amazing partner who I've gotten to meet, Gail. And, what are your tips on aligning with marketing? It's so critical. I think even more today, we talked about 70% of the journey is, done before they talk to a salesperson, and they're still doing a lot of research even while they're talking to a salesperson. So how do you stay in lockstep with Gail?
Well, I will have to say, this is the strongest partnership I've ever had when it comes to a marketing partner. I feel like, I always say, she's like my co-pilot. I don't feel like this is sales and marketing. We are in this together. In fact, she was just pinging me last night to say, how are we doing on forecast? I mean, it's a level of being in it together that I have not experienced. And I think so much of this is about, how each of the leaders thinks about their job and their responsibility. And I think that, Gail is very much a commercially minded marketing leader, and believes, I think, as I do, that our job is to bring our value to as many customers as we can in a coherent, aligned way. And that doesn't mean our priorities always, they're always, I'd like them to be doing more and different. And there's only, so much we can do. But I think what it starts with is great alignment around the vision. And from day one, I think Gail, we were both sort of new into our roles, and we were both coming in saying, gosh, there's so much opportunity, and we'd love to, shake things up and do things a little bit differently. And so coming in with, I think, a shared vision for where we wanted to take this business, and and go and, kind of who we want to be in the world. And then figuring out what's the strategy and the tactics. And then also aligning that to the very specific revenue outcomes. And I think in past lives, and you may have experienced this, marketing's goals may or may not, be totally aligned with the sales goals and the revenue goals. And so I think getting that alignment, but also the sort of the vision and the strategic alignment, as well as all the way down the funnel, is so important.
Well, we've been able to kind of make up our goals, and that's been somewhat of the problem.
Marketing generally, yeah.
Because an MQL can be whatever I want it to be. So, newsflash for those listening, I can literally make it whatever I want it to be. So that's part of the problem, but that's an episode for another day. So there's two questions that are kind of required for the show. We're talking, you're talking about deep sales. Our big campaign right now is about confidence and helping people proceed with confidence. And, our mission in life, our vision, our passion is, if we put the right data and insights similar to behind sales and marketing teams, we hope they can proceed with confidence in any climate, any economic climate. And so I think a lot about that word confidence, and I've been asking everyone, it's a very personal, emotional word, So what makes you confident? Like, how do you create confidence in yourself?
Oh gosh. I think sometimes it's not so much about being confident, it's just making a decision and going. So that's one. I think again, as leaders, you sort of hope you're making the right decisions and the right bets, but I think it's hard to have complete confidence because there's so many unknowns. And so I think there's an element of trust your gut. I have great, amazing business partners who help think through these things. I always feel more confident when I'm able to, I'm someone who likes to co-create. So I'm probably not going to be sitting in my office coming up with all of the answers myself. So if we can co-create and we collectively feel like, okay, there's something here, that gives me more confidence to go pursue something, even, without knowing that it's going to be the right thing. And then, a little bit of the fake it till you make it. I think there's just a little bit of, we learn every day by doing. And so I think sort of trusting, I think as long as you're open to learning as you go, not having to be right all the time, I think it's okay. I don't know. I guess those things kind of collectively allow me to go through the day and decision-making, feeling a bit more confident, but not needing to always be totally right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were on one of the CMO coffee talks, we talked about optimizing for speed and clarity versus perfect information. Like,
totally.
That's kind of what we have to do.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's great. Well, second question that everyone's got to answer. I believe you learn a lot more from your mistakes than from your successes. So give us an example of just kind of an F up that you learned from, and maybe someone else out there will avoid that in their career.
Yes, I've definitely had some F ups. Today I really think of my leadership style as, really grounded in sort of authenticity and vulnerability and just being sort of connected. But it came from effing up actually when I joined LinkedIn about 12 years ago. And I was coming from a company where I had learned to lead I learned to be a great sales manager, but I came in and I took a big step back coming to LinkedIn and into a role that I thought I could, just do in my sleep. And I had sort of this all business, like, I'm going to just like come in and like do great work and just like perform well and show them they made a great decision. And what I realized, and I got some pretty like harsh feedback early on. Well, it wasn't hard. It felt harsh. It was really great feedback, that the way I was leading, which was sort of all business, and really showing up as a manager, but not really bringing much of like my personal life and kind of just like sharing a lot about me, it was really creating this disconnect with my team, and they weren't sort of invested in me, and they weren't feeling trusted and or building trust with me. And so I had to really kind of reevaluate like how I was showing up as a manager and as a leader. And it was a real turning point because it made me realize that just driving for results and even just helping people win isn't enough to win the hearts and minds and inspire and connect. And especially at a company like LinkedIn, where the culture is so important. It's not results at all costs. It's all about how you lead, inspire, and create an environment where people feel like they can succeed and, be invested and win is so important. And so I learned that I needed to be a lot more vulnerable. I needed to be a lot more open to, just sharing the things that I was struggling with and some of the things we're just talking about. And that's really, it was a real turning point and in my sort of leadership trajectory. And I think that had I not made that change, I certainly wouldn't be in the role that I'm in today. And I certainly would have, made many more mistakes throughout my career trying to just get to results without starting from a place of trust and sort of like just connecting as a human. And I think in this environment, again, just like the pandemic, people are feeling stressed. It's just hard, right? And I think as leaders, just continuing to stay connected to, how do I show up as my authentic self, my imperfect self, and try to stay connected to the team is so important for just who I am as a leader today.
So I think this is really interesting. So the season is 12 episodes. 4 have featured women so far. 3 of the 4 women have all had a variation of this same thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, 3 doesn't make a sample. It doesn't make a statistical. But I just wonder if maybe we, for some reason, had to give ourselves permission to show ourselves more authentically.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Sorry. I think there's a different bar. I mean, that's one thing I learned is women are generally there's a different bar for how people sort of perceive women in leadership roles. And so I think that I had to learn to sort of soften, right? There are ways that we learn to lead and adapt that are important in order to be successful. And so figuring out that balance, and for me being too abrasive or too direct or right early in my career was a real derailer, and learning, okay, what's the balance? And part of that was what I chose to share and disclose and be open with my team. And part of it was actually communication style. And I think both of those were really important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is a follow-up point, I think. Maybe it's a topic at Empower. It's a whole nother podcast. But it's fascinating. And I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you being vulnerable. I'm sure all the listeners have a new level of connection to you, we'll save that lesson and it'll be something that they'll be able to apply as well. So awesome episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really think you're onto something with these points about, people that perform 150% better. I mean, I wrote it down and it's prioritizing, it's acting on the right signals, and it's, what are the hidden allies? And that's the recipe for folks listening. Alyssa just broke it down for us. You don't need to listen to any more episodes. We're done. So thank you so much for coming on. I know how busy you are. Appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always so fun to connect.